So, welcome, guys. Very interesting conversation. So, we have a wonderful panel. So the topic was the workforce reset and CHRO leadership in the age of AI trust and transformation. And I reached out to some of the HR leaders who are solving this, handling this thing firsthand. And the funny thing is the people who responded, and thank you Anuradha and thank you Elizabeth for taking my email and then responding to it promptly. I think it's wonderful the dynamics between you two as leaders. So it was funny, the company size that you represent, the structure is pretty much in a very two different directions, but so it gives the very widespread of and in my previous talk on what is needed to make an AI ready workforce, I put a lot of emphasis on institution. That institution needs to be trained, it needs to be adjusted, and that's I think it was it's a delight to have you guys agree to step up and participate in the panel. So to start with, let's do a quick round of introduction. So Elizabeth, maybe you can start first, and Anuradha, you can follow later. I'm really curious to understand and learn your journey into this HR role, and then we'll talk about your company and basically all everything in it, and then we'll go into the further into discussions on the topic of the day. So maybe Elizabeth, you can take over.
Sure, I'd be happy to, Vishal. Thank you, and thanks for inviting me. So my name is Elizabeth Mattila. I am the CHRO at Environmental Defense Fund. I am based in New York City. Our organization is a global organization. We have a little over 1,000 employees, and the main focus, as you can probably tell from the name of the organization, is that we are an environmentally facing we are an organization that's facing environmental challenges such as climate warming, clean air, sustainable fishing. Those are the areas of focus that we work on. And as mentioned, we are a global organization. Our main offices are in New York City, in Washington, D.C., San Francisco, and then in Europe, we're in Brussels. We are in China, and we are also in Indonesia. We, so for me personally, my HR journey started a really long time ago, and it wasn't something that I was particularly targeting when I was in my undergrad areas of study. I thought I wanted to be a journalist, actually. And so this is a different route for me, but I did work as an anchor reporter and writer for a couple of years after I graduated from undergrad, but then I realized it wasn't something that I wasn't passionate about it as I thought I would be. So then I ended up taking an HR role as a temp, and all these years later, here I am. So it's a wonderful occupation. I love HR. I'm really happy to be in it. I've been in it for 30 years now, and it's a wonderful profession because it's very mobile. I can do HR wherever, but there's a caveat to that, because while I could work in HR in a bank, or I could work in HR in a restaurant or a financial services, you really have to be passionate about where you are and really believe in it to be the most effective HR professional. And so being in a mission-driven organization appeals to me. That works for me. And so that's where I've been for the past going on 8 years now.
Thank you so much, Anuradha.
Thank you, Vishal, and great to meet you and Elizabeth, and hear your journey, Elizabeth, as well.
You too.
I'm Anuradha Mayer. I'm the Chief People Officer at a company called Infoblox. We do networking and security. We protect people, we protect companies. I too feel it's very mission driven. I'm in the Bay Area. I've been at Infoblox for 2 years, and I feel like I have one of the best jobs in the planet. Like I like Elizabeth, I'm very passionate about what I do. I love being in HR. I feel like we get a chance to help organizations be more dynamic and leaders be stronger, and people have an amazing experience. And so that's what I wake up thinking about every day. As far as my kind of career, I was a business major and journalism minor, and kind of funny, Elizabeth, I too wanted to be a reporter. I thought I was going to be, interviewing world leaders. And so I get a little bit of that actually in my profession. And the journalism piece of it, I think, has helped me be a better leader. So I'm really glad I did that. And yeah, I'm very passionate, like I said, about the work we do that then makes a difference in the world, both for our people and our communities and our customers. So I think about all three of these aspects. And yeah, that's me.
That's pretty cool. So I think let's talk about this conversation into three parts. Okay, so one is maybe the pre-GPT, the post-GPT, and then in future, right? So before AI become a thing, before OpenAI announced it and threw it on all of us, take it to today, and then looking at the future. So if let's start threading it in a history context. So if you take back before GPT, how has your respective organization has been evolving? The expectation, the people, the expectation from what the organization should be, how to train workers, the technology. So if you can walk us through uh, how the world has been before GPT and then contrast it with after, that will give us some light on um, what's happening. So maybe Anuradha, you can start from your journey, that what you had seen, how the organization has evolved from the people context before GPT.
Mhm. I was just in a conversation with someone on my team. We were talking about how, in the time that we've been in the workforce, like really not a lot has changed. Like we are, yeah, of course, our tools are better, we're more efficient around how we deliver products and programs and all of those things. But the aspects that we work on have been roughly the same. And so it's funny to talk about the world before GPT, and I am so glad to be in the workforce during this transition because it is unbelievable what's happening, and it's going to change almost everything we do. And so, I think about people, I think about culture, and I think about what are those dynamics that affect those things. And I think before GPT, we had a lot of science around that, and the science just got better. And so now that I know you want to kind of keep us on the what happened before, but what would take a long time to pull together insights. That's what's really changing, which we'll get into. But yeah, that's a bit about what life was like before.
Interesting. For you, Liz.
It's interesting because while AI is exciting and dynamic and it feels like there's something new every single week, a big area of change, like a fundamental change, really is for us was COVID. Because of course, pre-COVID, everybody was on site, everybody was there wasn't a question of whether it's hybrid or remote. And so if you wanted to work in the New York City office, you had to live in the New York City area. And now, of course, that's changed vastly. And we have video tools, and we have a new understanding of the productivity and how things can work like that. So that was really a very fundamental shift for the organization, not just us, of course. But with AI, I agree with you. It does feel like for a long time, our organization, like what we do has not changed. The organization started out a long time ago with detecting chemicals that were affecting the eggs of certain birds of prey, osprey in particular, and the toxic chemicals, DDT was, very pollutant, and it was affecting the environment. And so there are other issues that the organization is working on, but essentially the fundamental mission of Environmental Defense Fund is to protect and be a voice for the planet. I think with AI, certainly we have a large team of scientists And so the scientists who are doing their research are certainly helped considerably by AI. We can get research quicker, things like that. But there's a note of caution because we still have to be careful. AI is not perfect. It makes mistakes. And so we do need to not be over reliant upon it. But certainly, particularly for our researchers, it has helped a lot. I think for our advocacy arm of the organization, being able to be really on top of changing laws and changing, anything related to that changes so quickly, they have such quick access to it and can use AI to help interpret some pretty dense legal content that maybe would have taken longer before.
Interesting. So I think so. Two conversations that comes to my mind. So I was talking to one of the airline executive, and he was talking, and I was talking to him about how the world, how the IT infrastructure has evolved and all that. And he was telling me, Vishal, you know what? In 1995 or something, he said there was a Southwest that are coming in line, and we need to turn that around. So what we did is we took a pen and paper and start writing them, pre-boarding them. That was like a birth of pre-boarding or something. So he said we started sort of writing it on the chits, and then we put up a record of turning around a flight in maybe I think 2 hours. He said, right? So he talked about that paved way for a lot of this automation because a lot of this anxiety of really pushing for getting more flights. And the second example I was thinking about is an HR executive who was talking about the COVID. He said, Vishal, COVID taught us if you throw a book at us, right, and we don't know what to respond. Okay, it's coming. World is coming back, not coming back, maybe coming back. Oh, maybe not coming back. Oh, it's going to be longer, and that really create this environment of resilience in the culture of organization. So in many aspects they say that actually helped when something like AI came and this anxiety came, but we're still sort of reeling on. So I want to understand from your point of view. So one is these like the old school mentality, okay, I have built the system from ground up, and then the second is the adversity hits. The world has been practicing both of these notions for quite some time. Like, what is your vantage point on, is the culture ready? Like when it comes to AI, when it comes to what is expected out of organizations as they are reeling through this change. Maybe Anuradha, you can go first, and Liz, you can follow.
Great question. So COVID did teach us something. I was at Cisco for many years, and I was at Cisco during COVID. And overnight, every organization had to respond and figure out what they were going to do. And some organizations absolutely, I think, figured it out quickly and then thrived. Like their business thrived, their culture thrived. People were supporting each other in new ways. And so we found out like how resilient our company was in COVID. So it was an extreme test. I think that teaches us that we learned a lot about what do we need to do to either make our organizations more resilient. There was a lot of examples of where companies struggled. I do think to your question that one of the ingredients of resilience, I really believe this, is that we not try to get to, and I'm in the software industry, so I definitely think this, we not try to get to 80 or 90% on something and then go. Like it takes too long. It can be almost too fixed. Whereas, if we get to 50% on a solution and we take a mindset of iterating and continuing to course correct, we have a better shot of keeping pace with what change comes. And so I think about that even, in my organization when I lead teams, I think about, I know we would love to build everything out on a project we're working on, but could we launch something and then build on it to go, keeping in mind speed and also just keeping in mind agility as well. So, yeah.
Awesome. Liz?
Yeah, I think those are great points. I mean, the thing for us, like building resiliency within the organization, that is actually one of our core values. And so resiliency is super important to us. We want to make sure that we are, it's hard to be resilient, particularly when you're in an organization that is constantly facing headwinds, external headwinds. And so it's important for us to make sure that our employees feel like they're equipped to deal with these challenges. And I think that that's a good point about, not having like good being the enemy of, or perfect being the enemy of good. I think that's absolutely right. And so having the organization be okay with mistakes being made and not feeling like somebody's going to suffer a grave penalty if something is released or a solution is arrived upon and then it's not ultimately maybe the best thing that we can do. But as far as, I think earlier you had said, like, what is the impact of HR, of HR, of the impact of AI? It's a tough question because it's constantly evolving. I think that whether or not we're ready for it remains a little bit of a question in my mind. If you think about how are you defining readiness? I mean, we are certainly aware of it. We're certainly aware that it's coming. We're certainly aware that it is changing the employment landscape. And I think recognizing that we don't know things, that there's a lot that we just don't know yet, makes it okay for mistakes to be made. And I think that in and of itself makes us more resilient because we're okay testing things, trying new things. I remember when Chat GPT first came out and someone showed it to me, they're like, look at this crazy tool, and typed in whatever. And then it came out with an answer and it had a feeling like, wow, that's just nuts. Not necessarily recognizing that this is basically, we're in the midst of the world changing here. And so I do think that as AI becomes more refined and we figure out how we can best use it, that's going to make us more resilient as we figure out the way that it can strengthen our employees, make their jobs better, make our organization stronger.
Interesting. So just before this, I was giving a talk around this idea of institution, like how important, suppose if AI needs to be adopted, we need the institution to be ready, and how institutions take 30, 40, 50 years to absorb all the energy of transition, and then that's the outcome. So you cannot just say, okay, now start reacting like an AI ready from tomorrow. The system does not design that way. I was thinking about one of the discussion I had with one of the Fortune 10 CHRO, and he was talking to me about, he said, and very dynamic company, always in the news. And I was talking about what, like, you must be having a fun time hiring people or maintaining the culture. And he gave a very interesting thought. He said, Vishal, if you see an excited HR, run. So HR is supposed to be boring, it's slow, it takes whatever. So he was talking about this idea of cultural resilience, right? Because it represents the speed. They actually truly represents a stable culture and all that. So he was talking to me about he would need like 3-4 years in COVID time to absorb the shock and create a resilience, right? And then immediately as the COVID was going through, we got this GPT, and GPT now throw a totally different book at people. So from your vantage point, looking at your culture, looking at the organization that you are leading, do you think that organizations are rightfully resilient to understand this future of technology? Because there's a lot of media push, there's a lot of market expectation push to adopt these AI technologies. And companies are not used to be designed in this way. In the past, they used to, again, they used to take their sweet time to absorb the culture. And that's what their strength is today. So every company that is, look at a company like IBM, right? Hundreds of, so these guys exist because there's a very established culture of how it works. So what is your take into the organization that you lead, the expectations from the people that you manage, and people, and what's your take of how prepared are organizations from your vantage point to this transformation that are constantly hitting companies every 2 to 3 years?
So I'll speak for our organization. I should have mentioned too that Infoblox is just over $1 billion in ARR. We're very proud we just hit that milestone. and around 3,000 employees globally. I'll speak for Infoblox. So we're in tech, and tech, is kind of at the forefront of like AI. We're all talking about it, and the world is talking about it. I think there's a bigger expectation in tech that we make this transition fast. And our business is very strong. We're very proud of it. Our culture is equally as strong, and so we feel like we have the conditions of greatness. Our engagement is 88%. That's hot off the press. And one of the questions we asked in our engagement survey was, how often are you using AI? What are you using it for? What we found is 88% of our Bloxers, we call ourselves Bloxers, use AI. They're using it. And so the adoption, I should say usage is very high. And we're really glad about that. The conversation that we are having on our executive team, and our CEO in particular set these expectations with our senior leaders. He's like, daily usage, weekly usage, using it for productivity, that's great. How do you 10x your impact? 10x your impact. And we've seen examples of it. We have leaders in our organization that are role modeling this AI transition. And this is steeped in science. It's for anything you do. If you have your leaders role model it, then guess what? And I'm learning. I spend, sometimes my weekends with Claude, and I'm working on Claude. I'm actually going to learn vibe code. So I'm all in on making sure I am role modeling so that my team also will step into this transition and not be afraid of it. So we have a very high trust organization, a lot of psychological safety. We have strong leaders. So those kinds of conditions will make this transition happen. Now, what I'm watching out for is, yes, great AI usage, but do we have enough human connection? And because you put those two things together, and that's when the results are very strong. I was at a conference recently, again, they studied it, and they showed results of leaders that just focused on AI usage only. Like they were telling their team, you got to use AI, versus let's talk about how AI makes our life better, our work better, our impact, and then conversations about it so that the human connection still exists. And so I like the keeping both things in front of us, because it's behavior change and it's learning new tools.
Well said. Liz?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think about, where organizations are vulnerable with respect to AI. Our organization is much like Infoblox. So Environmental Defense Fund, our employees, for the most part, it's a highly skilled workforce. It's a highly educated workforce. And so they're not slow to adopt. They're all in on AI. They're not afraid of it. I think the issue is how do we think about AI in the right way? Because I think a risk factor can be over-indexing on AI, on what AI can do for them, and not at the same time evaluating the loss of the human touch. Because as I had mentioned earlier, we all know that AI isn't perfect. The information isn't always accurate. And so there are vulnerabilities in certain job categories. We know this. One thing that I've seen quite a bit of, which, I have to laugh because I think it's probably good that we didn't go into being journalists, is that the writers and computer programmers are two job categories where I've seen AI is really going to take over quite a bit. So I think that we're embracing AI, we're adopting it. There is a question specifically for our organization on the climate risk. And so the environmental impact of AI is well known. And so for us in particular, who thinks about the vitality of the planet, we do think about what is a smart way for us to use AI? How can it help us do our jobs better, be more effective, be more efficient? But also at the same time evaluating the factor against the environmental impact. That is something maybe more unique to us, but it is something that we think about.
If I can comment on that, we think about it too, because that's about responsible use. So we had a session recently where our CEO actually hosted a panel with two organizations that we partner with for offsetting our impact on emissions and carbon usage, and one of them was forestry, and one of them was farmers in India. And so we wanted our people to hear those stories so that they understand that responsible use of AI is important to making sure prompts are rigorous enough and that you're not constantly prompting, and what does responsible use look like? And then we also want them to understand our ESG strategy as well. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Glad you guys are paying attention to it. That's
Paying attention. Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
Important.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So now, considering the realistic check, right? So the expectation for your respective organizations to be AI ready versus what the actual that you see, the reality on the grounds. So if you can talk about that gap, if you can talk about, this is what the perception is that we should be, and this is where we are, or this is where I want to be. So if you can help us navigate your respective gaps, so we can understand that, how easy or difficult or challenging it is to adopt, making your workforce as AI ready.
I'll do my best to try and articulate the gaps, but I mentioned 10x, and so I would say there's some healthy impatience on our executive team to help people get to 10x, and the examples, and we've highlighted them publicly. We've highlighted leaders that have demonstrated results. So we had a leader in our organization who did some vibe coding in Claude, stood up this dashboard that probably would have taken us 6 months to build. And it was on one of our product areas. And we can see exactly how products are performing with all the insights, and then click into some details. It was a beautiful piece of work, beautiful piece of work. And so then the question is, how do we get all our people there as well? And I think we need to, and this is, our own kind of AI workforce transformation. I spent time with Claude trying to build out for my team, like what should an AI transformation look like? And so we have 5 tracks, and they're focused on things like org design to data and analytics. And so it's including like, how do we help our leaders get ready in the age of AI? And so what we need to do a better job of, that's going to take some time, and we're all on new territory here. Like, this is new ground. We've never, when I talk to my peers in the industry, no one's figured this out, like no one. And so we're trying things. One of the things my team launched is called AI Compass. It's our approach to AI learning. And it's a 5-minute assessment. So anyone in the company can take this 5-minute assessment. It connects to an agent that then gives you, where are you in your AI journey? And then where should you go next? And so this is 1.0, and we're just continuously making it better. And we have some ideas on how we can make it better, but we want to help people in a meaningful way, in a safe way, that they can understand where they are. And what we found is, people, I think, were just very honest, because we said, look, no one's grading you. This isn't going to your performance review. It's only for you. But we rolled up themes from we have close to 500 people that have taken this assessment now. And so what we're seeing is that people are focused on things like growth mindset. That's one of the capabilities that is important for AI and learning AI. So we have a lot more to learn. That's the short answer.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with that. And I'll think about a slightly different direction in terms of thinking about gaps, as you had asked earlier, Vishal. I think that for us, we certainly do use AI. We embrace AI. I think there are certain areas where we're still evaluating how to use it. So for instance, in our recruitment, a lot of recruiters are using AI for scanning resumes and for sorting through the giant amount of resumes that get sent. And so we know that what we're seeing, and I wouldn't be surprised if others are seeing this as well, but we see a lot where a job description will be posted. Candidates will take the job description, stick it into Claude or ChatGPT and say, write me a resume for this job. And the resume that comes out looks like they are absolutely perfect. And so how do you scan through this supposedly absolutely perfect candidate who actually isn't very well suited for the role at all in terms of the capabilities and skills they have, versus a real life candidate who actually does have those skills and who has also submitted an application for the role? So I think that is kind of a gap. Like, how are we trying to figure that out? That is one thing that we think about. The other thing we think about are, how are we protecting the organization from things like, how are we thinking about our cybersecurity? How are we thinking about combating deep fakes? Those kinds of things are still kind of, I feel like those are, I don't know if you want to call them gaps or just sort of areas where we need to do more work to figure out how we're going to address them. But they are issues that come to our mind, and that we want to make sure that the organization is prepared and ready, and that we're meeting those challenges in the way that's right for us and that protects the organization.
Interesting. So one area I want to spend some time on is the concept of sense of belonging, right? So I think organizations are pretty much built on this idea of that we all belong in this together. We will solve this interesting challenge together. And I think COVID has put all of us back to our drawing rooms taking these calls, or bedrooms taking these calls. And then these these tools came in, which again just explode the productivity outcome from, or at least created an expectation of the explosion of productivity outcome. So I remember, so last week my daughter came up with one project she was using Claude. So she said, Papa, I built this wonderful game in Claude. And I started asking her question, okay, well, how do you handle that? How do you handle that? And it was pretty much like fall flat in many of the aspects. So AI is very good at doing the first mile journey, which most of us anyways are very good at. Last mile is where the organizations are built around, right? It's getting the aha moment when someone else other than you touches it. And that is a constant sort of struggle. So now if you mix the two together, it becomes like a very toxic cocktail. So you have a depressed or a derived or lonely um, um, worker in some context, and then this overworked, not able to complete the project because Claude they can very quickly create beautiful first mile. Then you think you have got it, then you ask the next prompt and it breaks. Come back. This is cyclic loop. So I'm curious, are you seeing the same thing? And how are you thinking about addressing it? Or what is your take on the AI adoption in your organization up till now?
I really appreciate the question on belonging. It's something we talk about a lot. One thing I think the first thing I'll say is that our culture really is a tailwind for us, because and I'm a very data-driven leader, so I'll just quote some data. So over 90% of our Bloxers feel both supported and respected by their teammates and their leaders. So that's how they feel in the organization. This is, again, hot off the press. And when you have an environment like that, you have a better shot at having a high sense of belonging, which we see in our data too, that there is a high sense of belonging. But it's a daily practice. That's what we say to our leaders. It's a daily practice. And so I believe all roads lead back to leadership. And how are they bringing teams together and creating those moments of connection, even if it's virtual? So we often have teams connecting virtually. We're in over 30 countries. And then we bring people together in person as well. So it's important that the connection exists, so that when they're asynchronously working, that it's again a high trust engagement. We do believe, and this is one of our tenets, it is AI first, but it is not AI only. And this idea of work swap, which, as you mentioned a bit, is that AI can, you can produce all this stuff, and Vishal, you said this too, like, but it has to have oversight. It has to have verification. It has to have, and so when I, spent, especially one weekend in particular with Claude, I actually was writing in Claude, like, no, that's not right. You need to look at that again. And so it's AI first, not AI only. And I know I've said this a couple times, but the human connection on that is just is pivotal, because I am seeing organizations where people are paying attention to, are people using AI? They're just, well, that's all they're measuring. Are you using AI? I think that's the wrong question. I think it's where are you in your AI journey? Because it's going to take a minute. This is to learn these tools to get to 10x capacity, that will take time.
Interesting. And if I may ask, what's the mix of your workforce? So you said that. So how many are hybrid? Like, if you can walk us through that? So
yeah. So about 53% are tied to offices around the world. We have our largest number of people are in India, and then the US and Canada. Those are our three kind of big sites, but the largest one being in India. And then the rest are remote. And so we do have a culture, because we are very focused on creating communities where our offices are. Our culture club does an amazing job. We're also after the best talent in the industry. Sometimes they're not located right next to your office.
Thank you. Liz?
Yeah, we have the exact same approach. I mean, it's now that we're in the post-COVID era and have realized that we, will hire from wherever. However, with that in mind, our top leader, our CEO, has been with the organization for decades, and he is a leader who embraces technology. He embraces new ways of thinking and working. But he also is very much old school when it comes to the human connection. And we every year, even though we are now over 1,000 people, we every year have an in-person staff retreat, because we value people. Sometimes there's grumbling like, do we have to go to this? It's a lot of travel, because we do have a lot of a good amount of international staff. But overwhelmingly post-conference, people are so incredibly grateful for, like, I finally got to meet Vishal in person. It's like one of those, we get that a lot. And the impact of it is just so resoundingly successful. And people really love to know that after they've talked to this person for, the last 10 months only on video screen, they actually get to see them in person. And, so that human connection is very, very important to us. And then aside from the one mammoth retreat, there are also many retreats that we encourage and that we put into the budget for our teams, because AI is great and technology is great, but the human connection is something that remains high for us.
Interesting. And Liz, what's your layout of how many are hybrid, how many are they have 5 days a week and like remote only? If you can walk through, what's the percentage of your workforce?
Yeah, we don't have we have a pretty low percentage of 5 days a week, but we in office 5 days a week. Like, people are just not, they're just not doing that so much anymore. We do have, particularly in our New York City office, we probably have about 10% of the New York City staff does come in about 5 days a week, but it's, sort of low. But we have a good amount of hybrid staff. We have over 50% of our staff is hybrid. And then we have remote staff, which is located just like pockets, literally all around across the country and around the globe. Like, we have a couple of people in Sweden, a couple of people in, Australia. We have a couple of people in other countries and other places. Like, we have, one person who lives in Wisconsin. I mean, so it's just kind of wherever. It does make for challenging legal compliance sometime, and making sure that we're adhering to appropriate regulations and that the company is not, doing anything that would put us in non-compliance. But we do have a good amount of the workforce who is hybrid, over 50%.
Okay, good to know. So, so Liz, you talked about people writing beautiful resume because of they just gave a job description, say make my resume suits to this particular need. Like, what's your thought, and maybe another can follow on that. What is your thought on the answer is? Because today I think what you're hitting on is a very real pain. So now job descriptions are written by AI, resumes are written by AI, and hopefully the matching algorithm is also AI. So who is doing hiring anymore, right? So uh, people used to so HR used to maintain very tight grip on the culture of an organization, right? But these tools looks extremely promising on the kind of load they can. Obviously, you don't have to now deal with. I remember 5 years back, one of the HR leader I was talking to, he said, for every job they get 3,000 or so resume, and then they need to hire an outsourcing company to read. It was a big pain. Now these automation tools can help, but again, now because the moment you bring in that help, it's bias, and bias, like connecting the two, connecting the three. So, what is your take on how do you maintain the culture when almost everything is sliding into the hand of these AI tools?
I mean, I think we have the same kind of approach. Uh, in that AI is not the only tool that we have. It's a very useful tool. It is something that we use, but it's not the only one by any stretch of the imagination. We are, we still have an in-house recruitment team. They are the ones who are screening, we have AI helping to screen resumes, but AI's we don't have like a virtual AI first interview. Like we still have a person doing the interviews all the way through. We have onboarding that is I say in person, I mean like it's on video, but it's with an actual person rather than like a bot who's onboarding. We have something that we call the social activities committee that will plan certain things so that to encourage people to get into the office. So it's still helping to continue the tight knit culture that we have while still utilizing the tools in a way that can help make our jobs easier and more, efficient. I think on the AI side, like um, I saw a program one time about a detective who was interviewing a suspect for a crime, and he said one thing that triggered him that the guy's lying was because he was so specific and detailed, and he had like his whole day was laid out and he had receipts for everything and it was very detailed, and he was like it was just too perfect. And we kind of think about that when we're looking at resumes. If the resume is 100% perfect, it's probably an AI generated resume. So we have a grain of suspicion there. So we help continue to shape our culture by relying on the expertise of our people too. So our recruiters are the ones who will help us figure out how to appropriately hire, and they're the ones who will help us bring in the best people. And so we use AI, but it's a tool. It's not the only thing that we use.
Okay, yeah, I don't know.
Gosh, I have so much to say on this topic. Yes, levels of sophistication, levels of technology are growing on both sides. We're going to pilot an AI tool that's going to do screening of candidates, and so I'm so excited to see like what this produces. But that is only one step. We still have live interviews that happen.
Yep, we do too.
And yeah, so that's probably never going away, because especially when you have like fake candidates, fake employees, like all these things that are happening, you need to make sure that you're still putting controls in place, and that you're creating the conditions to hire the best talent. And so we think about candidate experience on the tools themselves, like what you said, Michelle, about AI against AI. That is going to continue to happen. We're going to have to adjust along the way. One of the things my CEO asked me recently is, we have to do all these trainings. These are required trainings. isn't somebody going to create, an AI agent that takes the training for them? And I was thinking, oh, I would love that. That would be, and it's probably coming. And then somebody asked, like, what do we do to deal with that? And I don't have an answer. Like, I have no idea.
Yep.
But
Yep.
those are some of the things that we're going to have to figure out. And again, as the technology increases, we're going to be able to figure out some of these things, but it probably will be challenging for a period of time until we do that.
For sure.
Interesting. So let's talk about the AI readiness of your workforce, because that's I think mandate with most of the companies nowadays. So talk to us about some of the challenges you are seeing, some of the challenges that so basically that you are just struggling as an organization to make your organization AI ready. So if you can walk some light on that.
Sure. So I'll tell you what we've done and what maybe some of our learnings have been. So we've turned on a number of tools. And so we use Glean. And inside Glean, we have Claude, we have ChatGPT, we have Gemini. And then, there's a number of us that use some tools on the side. So we got all the tools, like the tools are there. And then we've had, I think, over 400 agents that have been built in Glean, and people use them regularly. And then what I think is one of our challenges is, how do we make behavioral shifts? How do we turn on the growth mindset, the responsible use, the things that require judgment? And that to me there's the skill on tools, and then there's the skill on the kind of the people skills around judgment and learning. And so I would say great job on tools. We're there. And then we do some really cool stuff around tool training. Like we have Gleanathons, and so people can learn real time. I think one of the things I am personally doing is reverse mentoring. So we have someone who's early in career. She was an intern. She's now a full-time Blockster. And I spend time with her, and I just ask her, like, you're AI native. How do you spend your day? What's the first thing you do in the morning? And because I acknowledge that those of us that have been in the workforce for a while, we're not AI native. We have to fundamentally work differently. So that's the journey that we are all on, and we fully acknowledge that. And so we're sharing stories on how do we do this. So one of the things I do in my leadership team meeting weekly is we have a discussion on AI. So we'll talk about what examples are there of AI, kind of 10x AI. That's the question I ask. And then what have you read, watched, listened to recently that's been helpful? And so in our last team meeting, we had a discussion about an article that our chief legal officer, who's just an AI expert, she's phenomenal. She wrote an article in Substack, and so we all read it, and we had a discussion about what does it mean to us and what we do. So her article was about how do you watch out for AI in your writing and in your expression. And so I took her article, I dumped it into an agent that I use to write in my voice, and so I can take communication. And I use that and a few other things. And I said, and I dump things in there, and I say, write this, email in my voice. And it comes back with, this is how Anuradha would write it. And so we have to talk about these examples on a regular basis for us to be ready for AI. It's got to be an ongoing discussion.
Interesting. Liz?
I think one of the things that we think about is, where are we not going to use AI? So there's a lot of areas where you can use it, but one of the conversations that we have is, where are we not going to use it? We do talk about that in leadership team meetings, and like, is there a bright line? I think that the honest answer is that not yet. We know that we want to use AI to help us be legally compliant in certain things, to make sure that we're aware of, changing laws or regulations or political activity or whatever it might be related to the work that we do. But the other thing is that, where are we not going to use it? So we know for sure that we can use it as one element of the talent acquisition process, but it's not going to be the only element. And that in general is something that I've been reading quite a lot about. I read an MIT report just recently that said one way to think about AI is not like what wholesale jobs are going away, but rather what pieces of jobs are going away. So it may be that you're doing something, you're doing X role. Not everything, not in the same way that you're doing it, will it continue, you know, not everything that you're doing will continue in the same way. I mean, to say pieces of it may go away or may be delegated to AI, but not necessarily the whole job. So the job is going to shift. So I know that for us, we do think about where are we just not comfortable with in using AI. And some of it is making sure that we don't use that human connection, that we are still hunting through resumes in like with our people. We use AI to scan them, but we also do other checks to just look at them again. We're not going to use bots to interview. For us, that doesn't work. I get that some companies might do that, and that's fine. For us, it doesn't work. It just kind of depends on the culture of the organization. I think that like Infoblocks, that might be more appropriate. It's more like tech facing. People would expect it. For a mission driven nonprofit focused on the environment, maybe not so much. So it just sort of depends on the organization too. But we do think about like, where do we draw the line and where we're not going to use it? And so that's something that comes up frequently in conversation.
Okay, so we're into last few questions. So let's talk about your role per se. Okay, so how are you seeing your role transforming going forward as an HR leader? Like, how, if suppose I'm an aspirational, like I want to aspire to become an HR leader, what would be your suggestion for someone like me? Like, what should the future will be looking at?
Well, the role is changing significantly. So I'm thinking about how I'm going to lead differently. And to Liz's point, AI is not going to be applied everywhere. So we would never apply it for when our people are in crisis. We take a very high touch approach to when people are in crisis, as an example. And there's many others. And then I think, my role is to help the workforce, help the organization, help our people think about AI as augmentation, to Liz's point, but not that jobs are going away. If anything, we are going to continue to increase our early and career hiring. We love that we're challenging the status quo of, companies that are kind of doing away with these entry-level jobs. I think it's very short-term thinking. So we have doubled our early and career hiring, and we're going to continue to do that. Now, early and career hiring, the expectations are that they are AI native and they can work at a higher level. So that's how we have to reimagine the workforce, is that the expectations of roles and the job redesign looks different. So that's the work we need to do. And if you talk to my boss, the CEO, he's like, please get it done, yesterday. So it cannot move fast enough. It could not move fast enough.
Yeah, that's the same thing for us. I mean, the speed of work, of course, is not slowing down at all. I think for me as a CHRO, I think about the specifics of where the organization is going, our long-term strategy. That kind of thing doesn't change. I think what does change for us is we need to be absolutely entrenched in understanding at a deep level, what is the strategy, what do we want to do, and then how to get there may be different than what it was before. So we were thinking about workforce planning perhaps in a different way. It's about, what kind of people do we need in what roles and at what time, and the roles that we need in the future may be different than the roles that we need right now. So for me, getting really, really familiar with the long-term vision of the organization is key. And I think it's not something different for CHROs, but I do think it's a really, really high priority for being most effective as the people leader of the organization.
Interesting. So one, I don't know, it's a funny or non-funny question. So how do you see your role being replaced by AI? So I give you one example. So last 2 years, whenever I need to decide, I put a coin toss. Okay. and I write the odd of the coin toss, and I write basically, and I'm failing that. So definitely I'm underperforming a coin toss, right? As an organization. So these are pretty interesting conversations. So is your organization already having a AI worker? Do you think AI worker be leading a human workforce? It's still a gimmick. Like, I want your quick take on it.
I would challenge anyone to think that they can replace our roles with an agent. Maybe. I doubt it. Now, what is the expectation of my role is definitely changed. So we need to be able to drive an AI workforce transformation. Need to be able to lead in the age of AI. So the people that are going to become, have less relevance in the workforce are the ones that aren't learning it. And so without saying something like that to my team, I'm trying to lead, with the carrot versus the stick on AI, because I don't want to leave anybody behind. To me, success would be that most of our people make this transition. And that includes, and again, our leadership team, we talk about this, we all have to model it. Like, we have to lead the way on what this looks like. And so we have people on our executive team that are absolute experts in AI, absolute experts. And so in their domain, how do they become experts? And then how does that continue to build relevance for the business as well? But yeah, let me know if you can replace a CPO with an agent. I think some people would be interested.
Yeah, I don't see the role going away, and it's entirely certainly not. I do think that, as we were discussing earlier, that human touch is still important. I feel like if we're just living in a like really heavy AI world, there's a real risk of having a disengaged workforce. I still think you need the human connection and you need the human touch. And we are, at the end of the day, AI is a tool, but I don't think it wholesale replaces like a CHRO or chief people officer. I don't see that. Maybe I'm, blindly, naive, but I don't think so. I do think that we're going to do our jobs in different ways. I agree with that completely. And I do think that incorporating AI, or I should say not incorporating AI, seems as silly to me as saying, well, we're just not going to use cell phones. We like our landlines. Like, I just think that's just silly. Like, everyone has a cell phone. Everyone's going to be using AI. And I think the question is really, what is the best way for you and your organization to use it?
Interesting. So, great, good answer. So, last but not the least, so if you want something for the listeners to take away from this conversation, what would that be? Like, what would be your parting thought to our listeners and viewers?
I would say learn the tools and keep the human element. Just, keep that in mind and pay attention to when you're not considering the human element.
I see that there's somebody in the chat who's saying that they are a job seeker and they have the same fear, like it's just, that we're looking at the perfect resumes. There's not necessarily an easy answer for how to get past it. I mean, it is hard, and we are getting like thousands of resumes for a particular open role. I do think one thing that does make things stand out for us is, and it's not necessarily something that everybody does, but we actually look at the cover letter. So if somebody bothers to write a cover letter, it does actually, make us take a look at it. Maybe we'll scan through it in 6 seconds, but it is something that, could be a potential standout. I mean, I think that the organization workforces are changing, they're evolving. I think staying on top of things is crucial. You can't not understand that AI is here and the ways that it's being used, but it is also important to know that there are still people in jobs, and and I don't see people going away entirely. That's for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being super generous with your time. Pretty eye-opening conversation, and I agree. Hopefully, AI is not going to replace us anytime soon, till we see a retirement. So, just keeping the finger crossed. I hope Anthropic is also viewing this. So, thank you, guys. Thank you, Anuradha. Thank you, Elizabeth, for your time.
Yeah,
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes.
Bye.
Okay.
Cheers.